Greetings, fellow maker! I have been busy this past week with all of the information I got from my last video. I've been working on a Baldur's Gate 3 Karlach costume, got the wig, got the horns, I was working on the ears, made some ear tips that are too heavy and too floppy.
Oh, you look like Dobby.
Dobby wants a sock!
I'm a free elf!
Thank you so much to all of you who left great feedback in my last video. A lot of you talked about prosthetics and how to mold and cast ears. Some people were talking about using lighter weight materials besides the polymer clay. I also got some great suggestions for businesses that sell cosplay ears already made. So I'll link those down below if you are looking to skip ahead to an already done product. Some of you recommended wire, to have wire going through the ear and behind the ear. That seems to be the main problem with these. So it's weight just added to the tip and it wants to bend sideways. So if I had some kind of armature of wire that hooked back behind the ear and kept it upright, that would help too. In my last video, I decided to remake these, and I did. Guess which method I chose and should have gone with first? Yeah, foam clay. We already had it. I had to send Bill out to get polymer clay, so why didn't I just go with this? I don't know. I've actually never used it before. I'm the editor for Bill's Foamsmith book, so when he did Foamsmith 3, he did a whole section on foam clay. These books have so much useful information in them, and I really recommend Foamsmith 3 for any kind of headgear. And this is about when foam clay started coming out, when he came out with this book, so there's a ton of good information about foam clay in there. Since I haven't worked with foam clay, it wasn't like in my brain toolbox as a material to try and use. So I dug this out. It is several years old. This foam clay was sealed super well in a Ziploc bag, and surprisingly, it's still good. It's a really weird material. It's springy. It wants to be inflated and airy and keep its shape. But once you break off a piece and knead it and kind of mix the water in it around, it becomes very workable. I cut out the ear on my reference to be able to trace onto 2mm foam. This is going to be my armature. I could use wire, I could use aluminum foil like I did last time, but I think this 2mm foam will work just fine. Since last time I had trouble fitting clay around my ears, I chopped off the back of my 3D printed ears. That way I can wrap the whole ear around it. I used just normal water to wet down the foam beforehand to help the clay adhere. What I found with working with this clay is it goes on pretty easily, but when you add more lumps to the already existing clay that's on your form, it might have trouble kind of bonding together and being more homogeneous. It's like it starts to self-skin and set up in a couple minutes. So you want to work in small batches. I even made sure to seal up the rest of the foam clay while I was working on one ear to make sure the whole rest of the clay didn't dry out. And since this tub of clay is many years old, it's possible the working time has been diminished a bit. For the second ear, I tried laying out a sheet of foam clay and then putting my 2mm form on top of it, then using a sculpting tool to cut out the shape. And that worked much better, just to get an even layer of clay around the whole form. And like I said, the clay was already kind of setting up and it didn't really want to be manhandled anymore. I did try some sculpting tools to kind of get some of the shapes in, but it just kind of sprung right back. I let the clay dry on the ears for 24 hours and then tried to peel off the ears from the form. Any of the clay that was in contact with the ear forms was not dry yet, and I don't know how long it would take to dry not being exposed to the air. So I peeled the ears off the forms, and some of the edges were pretty thin and jaggedy, so I added some more clay, and with a little bit of water and more clay added, I let it dry for another 24 hours. Even though I added clay later, it joined just fine, but it did have that kind of like seam thing going on that I'm gonna have to sand out later. I started with hand sanding and all fine grits, 220 or up. I used just normal sandpaper, and I also have this little like Q-tip looking thing that has a finer grit sandpaper on one side. I tried that out. But what really worked well was the rotary tool. I thought it would be too aggressive, but I used a sanding drum that's really worn down, so it's like a 220, but also it's really old. And it helped to gently form the ear shape that I wanted, since it was too hard to sculpt in for me. And here are my new ears. I chose to do the full ear sculpt instead of the ear tip. I found that worked better in my very first attempt of this guy. It was the one that was too big and extra heavy. But with foam clay, this weighs nothing. And being able to capture the whole ear really helps it keep its place on my actual ear. And so this is with no glue. I can just pop these on. Even with like my glasses and hair in the way, they still want to stay. Look at that. I will definitely want to glue them on because I could see them wanting to pop off a little bit. Look at that. Since they're so light, there's no bounce or bend to them, and they want to stay upright. I'm just so stoked. Thank you to those of you who recommended trying out foam clay. I was able to sculpt these on my ear form and had those off drying while I'm working on other parts of my project. So it was great. And I think they're gonna work out. They do need some paint though. I'm not even gonna prime these, I'm just gonna go straight to Plat Effects paints. And I figured since I don't have my red makeup yet, I'm gonna paint these my skin color just to show off for the end of this video to show how it kind of joins with my normal ear. And then later I will paint these red. And there we go, one layer of paint, not quite my skin color, but now it's all kind of homogeneous and you can get a general idea for what the pointy ears are gonna look like. I am very happy with how they turned out, and I am very happy with how light they are. Still super flexible. When I wear this on the day, I'll put some adhesive on, but it is nice I can just tuck them on there just to show off. I love it. Again, thank you for the recommendations on all the different things I could do to make my ears work. It was very helpful. I very much appreciate it. And also, thank you to the members of our Extra Credit Club. It's because of you I can do these videos and prototype and test things and get feedback. And I really appreciate your support. Keeps our lights on. There's a link down below if you'd like to join and become a member and help us make future videos. That's it for this little project. I've got to keep working on the rest of my costumes, so I will see you in the next video.